Todesstrafe. Die Verurteilung des russischen Oppositionellen Nawalny zu 3,5 Jahren Gefängnis hat international Empörung ausgelöst. Die Bundesregierung forderte, wie die USA, Großbritannien und Frankreich, die sofortige Freilassung des Kreml-Kritikers. Nach dem Urteil kam es zu Protesten. Mehr als 1400 Menschen wurden landesweit festgenommen. Revision nach Lübcke-Prozess. Die Familie des ermordeten Kasseler Regierungspräsidenten Lübcke hat Revision gegen das Urteil des Oberlandesgerichts Frankfurt eingelegt. Sie richtet sich gegen das Urteil für Markus H. Der Mitangeklagte war vom Vorwurf der Beihilfe zum Mord freigesprochen worden. Wegen eines Verstoßes gegen das Waffengesetz erhielt er eine Bewährungsstrafe. Das Gericht hatte den Hauptangeklagten Stefan Ernst zu lebenslanger Haft verurteilt.
واقعیت دیوانگی به نظر بیاد. ولی فکر می‌کنم برای پیدا کردن معنای زندگی باید جواب این سوال رو بدیم. آیا واقعیت مستقلی وجود دارد یا نه؟ داستانی رو فرض کنید که مستقیما از یک فیلم علمی تخیلی استخراج شده. دنیای اطراف در حقیقت چیزی بیشتر از ساختار هوشمندانه یک هوش برتر و ناشناخته نیست.
يتم بطولية عراقية بامتياز كما أشار إلى نجاحها بتدمير جماعة كاملة وقتل أكثر من 42 إرهابيا جنوبي نينوى الشهر الماضي. ميدانيا أجرى رئيس أركان الجيش الفريق أول الركن عبد الأمير يار الله زيارة إلى محافظة ديالى للوقوف على مستجدات الأوضاع الأمنية إثر الاعتداء الإرهابي الذي استهدف منطقة نفتخانة يوم أمس. ذكر مراسل العراقية الإخبارية أن يار الله عقد اجتماعا مع القيادات العسكرية والأمنية في المحافظة لمتابعة ومناقشة الخطط العسكرية والإجراءات المتبعة لتأمين المحافظة والقضاء على بقايا فلول داعش الإرهابي.
Droga zatwierdzenia preparatów w Unii Europejskiej wtedy wyglądała tak, że Stany Zjednoczone już mówiły OK, Wielka Brytania także, Arabia Saudyjska, Meksyk również, a Europejska Agencja Leków cały czas miała pewne wątpliwości. Czy ta ścieżka zatwierdzania preparatów nie powinna być bardziej spójna, nie powinna być nadrzędna nad państwami, nad organizacjami międzynarodowymi, coś w zasadzie na kształt WHO, tak abyśmy te preparaty dostawali szybciej, skuteczniej i żeby nie było tego typu wątpliwości?
Oczywiście. And part of these vaccines to Gaza, even if they were only 2,000 doses, because at the beginning, we gave priority to all of the health workers in Palestine, whether in the West Bank, Gaza, or Jerusalem.
According to some estimates, the amount of positive COVID-19 patients in the Gaza Strip is nearing 40% of the population. Morbidity rates are relatively low, but that could change soon. The Palestinians are expected to receive another 50,000 doses of the vaccine in the coming month. The source of the vaccines this time will be COVAX, the World Health Organization aid plan for countries in need. When that happens, the mass vaccination campaign will start in the West Bank, and that could be the beginning of the end of the pandemic here.
An emerging report today claims Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to arrange a state visit to Egypt ahead of the upcoming election in Israel. But according to the report, citing sources involved in the matter, Egyptian President al-Sisi asked Netanyahu to express support for a two-state solution or express some other gesture toward the Palestinians in exchange for the invitation to Cairo. Those were your top stories this hour from the I-24 News Desk. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here at the top of the hour with more headlines.
Debe a vacina de ser, bueno, supoño que para todos, non? Xa é para nós, os que estuvemos fora, pero ti que estuveches, digamos, na zona cero da COVID, que aí en Ourense tamén viste momentos realmente complicados, non sei, como o home da lúa, non? Un pequeno paso para o home, pero un grande para a humanidade. Non sei se o ves así tamén.
Sí, claro que sí. Con isto conseguimos algo de inmunidade, por lo menos estamos máis protegidos frente ao que nos ven.
Como está a UCI agora mesmo, aí no Hospital de Ourense?
Pois creo que non está tan mal como en outros lados, pero estamos bastante fastidiados.
Sí, hoxe volveu a haber por riba 2.000 contagiados, pero baixou un pouco a presión de hospitalizados en todo Galicia, pero ti dixecho moi ben, de que de que estamos máis protegidos ca vacina. Non hai que pensar que estamos completamente, claro, eu creo que aí dixéstelo moi ben.
Estamos máis protegidos e hai que seguir as normas que nos indican e eso, esperar que isto sexa a solución a largo plazo.
Pero bueno, nós dende aquí ver tanto aos nosos maiores, aos nosos residentes vacinados, como vervos a vos, ao persoal sanitario que xa está despollando a segunda vacina, a verdade é que sí que nos tranquiliza, de alguna maneira nos dá algo positivo en tantos meses negativos, non?
Kamoli za višečlane obitelji, do toga da postoje još uvijek mjesta gdje ne postoji struja ili vodovod.
Jako je stradala knjižnica u Petrinji koja za vas ima posebno značenje. Kako ste to doživjeli?
Pa moram priznati da usred te zapravo brige za ljude mi se dogodilo da više bi ipak knjige su nadoknadive. Sva materijalna šteta je zapravo nadoknadiva i to je prekrasno zapravo shvatiti u trenutku nekom u kojem se tako nešto dogodi. Mi svi možemo jednoglasno reći zgrade ćemo moći sagraditi.
Fermata la salma e sequestrata, adesso la salma è nel cimitero di Trani a disposizione dell'autorità giudiziaria. Fu fermata poco prima che il feretro partisse alla volta di Foggia dove doveva essere cremato per volontà proprio del professor Schonauer.
Ecco Giovanni,
cosa succede?
Il professor Schonauer appunto aveva dei problemi, cioè non poteva essere lasciato solo perché appunto dicono i figli non stava bene, aveva dei problemi. Ma che tipo di problemi aveva il professor Schonauer, tanto da non poter essere lasciato da solo? Perché insomma da quello che si sa lui comunque stava bene, cioè non aveva problemi di memoria, non aveva malattie particolari, per cui che tipo di problemi aveva?
Daniela, sappiamo che aveva patologie pregresse, patologie respiratorie, questo sappiamo che era lucido e quindi l'autopsia dovrà accertare appunto questo, di quali patologie soffrisse e se la morte poteva essere conseguenza appunto dello stato di abbandono, ossia indipendente da questo. Oltre a un esame medico-legale è probabile anche che ci siano degli esami tossicologici per capire eventualmente se ci fosse dell'altro. Quali sono le cautele che possono essere state adottate appunto da chi doveva badare a lui. L'interrogatorio in pratica è uno solo, cioè con un'assistenza appropriata l'ex professore si sarebbe potuto salvare. Questo è il sospetto dei familiari, o meglio di uno dei figli del professor Schonauer, ed è questo l'interrogativo che anche la procura ha e che la procura deve cercare di risolvere appunto con l'esame autoptico. Prima di allora non possiamo dare altri elementi. Sicuramente l'ipotesi dell'avvelenamento, che era una prima ipotesi circolata, non è tra le ipotesi possibili, altrimenti si sarebbe parlato di altro. In questo caso l'ipotesi di reato è quella del 591 del codice penale, appunto l'abbandono di persone incapace seguito da morte.
Quindi una serie di coincidenze potrebbe essere stata la causa della morte di Schonauer, ma l'autopsia darà delle risposte certe?
Sicuramente darà delle risposte certe in merito alle patologie di cui soffriva il luminare della ginecologia. Poi bisognerà capire se ci sia un nesso causale tra l'abbandono e la morte stessa, se cioè, come abbiamo detto prima, l'interrogativo è quello: se fosse stato assistito, se ci fosse stato qualcuno in casa nel momento in cui il professore abbia potuto avvertire questo malore, se ci fosse stato qualcuno in casa si sarebbe potuto o meno salvare. Ma naturalmente questo sappiamo, era solo in casa, in quel momento la moglie non era in casa, è stata sentita, quindi avrà evidentemente giustificato il motivo del suo allontanamento, ma quando è arrivato il 118 non ha potuto far altro che, probabilmente è arrivato proprio all'ultimo momento, che constatare la morte del professore, il quale, a quanto ci risulta, sia stato proprio lui a chiamare il 118 avvertendo questo problema probabilmente di carattere respiratorio. Abbiamo delle indiscrezioni che possiamo dare. Nei giorni precedenti la morte più volte qualcuno aveva visto sotto l'abitazione del professore avvicinarsi l'automedica e l'ambulanza del 118, evidentemente perché già il professore non stava bene. La casa di Trani, mi dicevi precedentemente, era la casa dove avevano deciso di vivere dopo essersi sposato, erano le seconde nozze del professor Schonauer, una casa che dà sul porto, evidentemente erano gli anni della pensione che il professore avrebbe voluto godere appunto con la vista del mare di Trani.
Quanti anni aveva il professor Schonauer, Giovanni?
Era vicino agli 80, avrebbe compiuto di lì a poco 80 anni, grande luminare della ginecologia, del primario, del reparto di ginecologia del Policlinico di Bari, aveva deciso poi naturalmente di trascorrere la sua pensione qui, 79 anni, ne avrebbe compiuti 80 prossimamente, la moglie più giovane di lui.
اللهم اجعله سندا لهذه البلاد وشعبها اللهم وفقه لما تحب وترضى اللهم هيئ له البطانة الصالحة الناصحة.
And that, I think, makes a difference to my reporting.
As doctors, Mohammed and Zaina have been on the front line of Syria's humanitarian crisis. But then came the pandemic and a baby. Our world, Syria, a family's fight against the virus on BBC World News.
If you've got questions about the stories making headlines, Reality Check is here to help you get the facts straight. Our team of experts examine the evidence and cut through the spin. Join me, Chris Morris, here on BBC World News, or go to bbc.com/reality check.
This weekend on The Travel Show, we'll be finding out how alpine ski resorts are dealing with a winter season of closures, being forced to adapt in order to survive. That's The Travel Show this weekend on BBC World News.
Some days of the week are just different. Weekends on BBC World News.
This is BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. Our top stories. Myanmar's military charges Aung San Suu Kyi with criminal offences. The ousted civilian leader is accused of illegally possessing two-way radios. Women in China's so-called re-education camps have been systematically raped and tortured, according to first-hand accounts obtained by the BBC. After 30 years at the helm, the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos, is to step down as chief executive of Amazon.
Nuova puntata di Forbes Silicio all'insegna della mobilità elettrica. Ci sono diverse aziende negli Stati Uniti che hanno raggiunto una valorizzazione di 30 miliardi di dollari proprio perché impegnato nella guida autonoma. Partiamo con KATI e-Volt Drone che General Motors ha presentato recentemente. Sono degli elicotteri che possono muoversi in città. E Mary Barr, l'amministratore delegato di GM, ha presentato in questa occasione anche 30 nuovi modelli di auto elettriche. Questo drone raggiunge la velocità di 90 km/h e può atterrare in piccoli spazi dentro le metropoli. Passiamo poi a Cruise, l'azienda di guida autonoma, sempre del gruppo General Motors che ha sede a San Francisco, ha fatto un accordo importante con Microsoft per sviluppare la sua piattaforma di guida autonoma e ha raggiunto una valorizzazione di 30 miliardi di dollari. Teniamo d'occhio l'azienda israeliana che si chiama StoreDat perché ha messo a punto delle batterie di nuova generazione per le auto elettriche che si possono ricaricare in 5 minuti. Finanziati dal gruppo tedesco Daimler, da BP e da TDK con un investimento di 130 milioni di dollari. Samsung negli Stati Uniti lancia il suo Galaxy Tab Active 3, che è un tablet rugged, quelli che servono per i lavori estremi, e andremo a vedere quali prestazioni ha. Ospite di oggi Guido Geminiani di Impersive, un'azienda italiana che lavora nella realtà aumentata, nella virtual reality, soprattutto per brand molto importanti, tra cui
К этому часу оставайтесь на CBC.
Əziz Şuşa, sən azadsan. Aşağı Gövhər ağa məscid. Əziz Şuşa, biz qayıtmışıq. Əziz Şuşa, biz səni dirçəldəcəyik. Şuşa bizimdir. Qarabağ bizimdir. Qarabağ Azərbaycandır.
My colleague, they have their own technology there. So they initiate their first vaccine by doing the adenovirus-based. So again, we discussed, all depends on the technology you have. And also, more importantly, in my opinion, as a virologist, I would encourage to have different kind of lines, because we don't know which one would be good.
Even with these variants, Chinese vaccines are not having a disadvantage because it is inactive vaccine, right?
You already heard maybe some news say mRNA vaccine, they can get the gene changed within 2 months.
That was what they said.
Yeah, exactly. I know people worried, well, you have an inactive vaccine, you might take some months. I'll give you an example. Inactive vaccine for the flu in China, 2009 pandemic, within 87 days, roughly 3 months, we have a new vaccine. Because the experience we already have, I think the inactive vaccine, if we have a mutated variants, again, we might also, with the inactive technology, we might also have it within 2 to 3 months.
Is China doing that? Once have the virus, the variant virus?
Exactly. Once you have the virus variants there, you have the virus strains, I don't think that could be a problem.
This is World Inside. I'm Tian Wei. Still to come in the program, a mad scramble for COVID vaccines. Who gets what vaccine, when, where, and how? Answers from the head of CEPI, one of the most important organizations on vaccines in the world. Coming up right next.
Our goal in COVAX is to deliver more than 2 billion doses of vaccine to countries that need it.
In this episode of Travelogue, I'll discover how Beijing's contemporary art scene has responded to the challenges of 2020.
On est complètement insignifiant face à un homme, ses chiens et son cheval, perdus dans les vastes étendues des montagnes. Elles nous font la vie dure, mais c'est vraiment sympa. On a beau avoir les muscles endoloris à la fin de la journée, on adore ça.
Notre temps sur Terre est très limité.
Increased secularism is
is very evident now in the country. We've had increasing representation of women and other historically marginalized groups in leadership roles. And essentially, a functioning democracy such as ours, with representative institutions, have borne out the will of the people, but it's the voice of the people in Ireland that has really brought about this transformative change. And as you've mentioned, one of our referenda, I would say, just by way of, to crystallise by way of background, in a sense, and this is my own personal opinion, the Irish instinct for freedom, for inclusiveness, for tolerance, and for progress are really the issues that have led to these changes and to this difference of voice. And it was the people's voice that brought about and was heard indeed in the marriage equality referendum in 2015, in the abortion referendum in 2018, and also, of course, the appointment and choice of 2 women presidents for our country, about which we're very proud.
It's also, I imagine, due to the diminishing influence of the Catholic Church.
Well, of course, and I would say that, you know, the civic engagement which we have been involved in, like our Citizens Assembly project, have essentially replaced religious and patriarchal dogma, which was so endemic in our country for so long. But this has now, to all intents and purposes, been replaced with this new voice, and the people have been empowered to reshape our country and to transform our society. And this is evidence as a result of the results of these referenda have shown how transformed we are. But there's more to be done. There's always more to be done. And this is recognised from the top down.
And of
course, the largest failure of the original test and trace program is that there wasn't any kind of support in ensuring that that isolation piece was going to have high compliance. And so even now when we're doing the door-to-door, that's a great proactive step. But when that positive test comes back, what are we doing to ensure that people feel supported to isolate as needed? And even the language is really important. Co-protection is one word that the WHO is now referring to as a potential alternative, which gives it a really strong signal that you are putting others at risk if you do break that isolation period. So in the sense of how it's being done and it's being rolled out within those communities through these swab tests, which is fantastic, but there's still a big missing piece. And really, when we look at the 100,000 plus death toll that the UK has had, we could have had less lockdowns. We're in our 3rd right now. We could have reopened in a more flexible way, as we see in New Zealand, Australia, South Korea, Taiwan, etc. If that test and trace scheme would have been thought out in a different way and linked into those local public.
Ձախ ձեռքով հետ ենք տանում եւ կզակը վեր ենք բարձրացնում եւ կատարում ներփչում։ Ուրեմն այս երկու ներփչումից հետո, եթե մենք պետք է մեզ թույլ տանք, եթե որևէ մեկը չի պարտադրի, կրկնում եմ, անել վենտիլյացիա։ Անում ենք եւս 30 ուրեմն սեղմում։ 32-ի այսպես 5 ցիկլը մոտ 2 րոպեում կկատարվի եւ ամեն 2 րոպեից հետո պետք է վերագնահատել վիճակը եւ կատարել այս գործողությունները այնքան մինչեւ կժամանի շտապօգնությունը.
Anywhere from 15 to 75%. Researchers also found that the reduction in new cases was the most for those above 60 years of age. This is the first study to identify causal effects in a population rather than in a clinical setting, highlighting the correlation between wearing face masks and a drop in new infections. Klaus Welde, Professor of Economics at the Johannes Gutenberg University Mainz, is the co-author of this study, and he joins me now. Good to have you with us. What I noticed is that your study doesn't mention specific face masks. Why not?
That's true. We don't mention specific face masks because the regulation at that time just required to wear any mask. So these were probably normal self-made, homemade masks.
Okay, so we don't really know about the efficacy when we take into consideration the medical masks, which are now mandatory in many places, or FFP masks. Or do you have a hunch? Would they be even more effective?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, there are other studies that study in detail which type of mask is more effective. And we know, of course, that cloth masks are not the best ones. So FFP2 masks, as an example, they have a much better filtering system.
Okay, but apart from the model or the material of a face mask, what other factors play a role in making wearing a mask effective? I believe your study also points to different regions, different climate.
Yeah, well, regions and climate, I'm not so sure. But what definitely matters is how good a mask fits. Now, if as a man you wear a beard, then of course there's a lot of airflow at the edge of the mask, and this can be a problem. And in any case, with any mask, it depends on the environment. If you are in a contaminated, if you inhale contaminated ambient air, then you can get infected anyway. I mean, droplets and very small droplets, they enter anyway.
Right. I just had to smile because you mentioned beards, and I know a few colleagues here, including our science correspondent, who will find it difficult to part with the beard. But back to the efficacy of a face mask. The average in your study says it's at around 45, 47%. That's a good start, but it means that we also need different measures to win this fight. Which rules are the most important? Are all the rules that we need in place from your point of view?
Well, it's definitely true. Masks are not the only measure we should employ. There should be other rules. But if I should say something about rules, I mean, rules are one thing, but compliance to rules is a much different thing. When we look, for example, at the sudden increase of infections before Christmas, then this cannot be related to rules because the rules didn't change at that time. But we know.
Nazionali per la Cina, l'arrivo di Mario Draghi rafforzerebbe l'Italia alla guida del G20 sul piano internazionale, un'impresa ardua, sottolinea Pechino, che ricorda il mancato sostegno del Parlamento al precedente governo Monti con il paese in piena crisi politica nel mezzo della pandemia. Intanto in Cina gli esperti dell'OMS non escludono che il virus sia uscito dal laboratorio, mentre il Giappone conferma le Olimpiadi. Ci racconta tutto nel servizio Anna Maria Esposito.
Assediati dalle telecamere, pedinati in ogni spostamento, gli emissari dell'Organizzazione Mondiale della Sanità a Wuhan non escludono ancora alcuna ipotesi sull'origine della pandemia. Tutte le ipotesi sono ancora sul tavolo, dicono in un'intervista, sottolineando di aver avuto la possibilità di raccogliere dati che finora non erano noti. Nelle ultime ore l'indagine si è concentrata proprio sul laboratorio di virologia della metropoli cinese, da dove il virus potrebbe essere uscito accidentalmente. Tra gli esperti c'è chi collabora da tempo con la responsabile del laboratorio, la dottoressa Xi Jinli, nota come Batwoman per le sue ricerche sui pipistrelli. Intanto sono confermati 25 nuovi casi nella Cina continentale, di cui 10 provenienti dall'estero, ma nelle ultime 24 ore non si registrano decessi. Intanto nel programma COVAX per fornire vaccini ai paesi più poveri, la Cina fornirà 10 milioni di dosi da 3 case farmaceutiche, Sinovac, Sinopharm e CanSino Biologics. E grazie al 500.000 di fiale arrivate in Pakistan dalla Sinopharm, la campagna vaccinale è cominciata proprio dagli operatori sanitari. Limitati gli spostamenti per il Capodanno lunare che apre i festeggiamenti per la primavera e che quest'anno ha visto la nascita ben augurante di 10 nuovi cuccioli di panda in un centro di ricerca di Shenzhou nel Sichuan in Cina sud-occidentale. I più grandi preferiscono invece le temperature più rigide. E la neve imbianca anche l'isola di Hokkaido in Giappone, che intanto resta in stato di emergenza per un altro mese fino al 7 marzo, in 10 delle 47 prefetture giapponesi. Il premier Suga comunica che la contrazione dei consumi ammonterà a 3,6 trilioni di yen e che si potrebbero perdere 159
뭔가 민망해가지고 5만 원은 조금 애매하니까요. 아, 대열이 형한테 듣고 싶어요. 대열이 형한테 저를 포함한 나오는 동생들 리더 버전으로 해서 캔 음료를 아무 때나 버리고 완성문이네. 냉동실 내 거인 마냥 막 써서
con la autorización, debida autorización, para multiplicar esta y tratar de lograr, yo siempre digo que a finales de año una inmunidad de rebaño que sea importante. Agradecer a una persona que me está escuchando, que me mandó un mensaje, que yo olvidé decir algo que es muy importante y que traduce los riesgos que tiene el incremento de la incidencia de casos confirmados, y fue que no dije los pacientes confirmados que tenemos hoy en las terapias intensivas, y que es una cifra elevada de 58 pacientes en terapia intensiva, lo cual además muy grave que de esos 58, 33 tengan un estado crítico, 25 grave, pero que los riesgos son muy elevados. Cuando se trabaja con esta cifra y además el comportamiento de esta enfermedad, pues realmente los riesgos son muy elevados. Gracias a la persona que me envió el mensaje. Como te decía, también el mundo
غير المسبوقة التي جائحة كورونا. كما حرصت العلامات التجارية لمجموعة كيومبي على اتباع نهج يهدف إلى تعزيز الوعي واتخاذ الاحتياطات اللازمة للتخفيف من حدة آثار الجائحة. ويعكس هذا الإنجاز الجديد للمجموعة ما حققته من نتائج مالية قوية للسنة المنتهية في 31 من ديسمبر الماضي، حيث بلغ إجمالي الموجودات بنسبة 9% لتتجاوز مبلغ تريليون ريال. وتعتمد وكالة براند فاينانس معايير صارمة في تقييمها لقيمة العلامات التجارية المصرفية، أخذة بعين الاعتبار عددا من المعطيات، من بينها حجم العمليات المالية والانتشار الجغرافي والسمعة العالمية والإقليمية وتصنيف العلامات التجارية. كما
in Schutz sind.
Wir finden aber, dass Keime sich schlecht in die Luft bewegen lassen, und darum vermuten wir, dass Proteine eine Ursache sind, die einen Schutzfaktor darstellen.
Proteine sind luftiger. Und es gibt ein Protein, das die Kuh vor Infektionen schützt. Es ist ein sogenanntes Lipokalin, das vor allem in der Kuhmilch enthalten ist. Aber vielleicht nicht nur dort. Auch wenn die Kuh pinkelt, könnte dieses Protein in den Staub gelangen. Im Labor analysieren die Forscherinnen den gesammelten Staub. Sie vermuten, dass vor allem im Staub von Bauernhöfen mit traditioneller...
Sure. Thanks for having me. Let me explain what we do in general, and then I can talk about what we did with Reddit. So we provide what's called alternative data from the web. Business activity has been coming online for a while now. Right? Companies are selling products online. They're hiring employees online. They use social media to market their brands online. So the side effect of this big shift is a lot of data gets created that's really actionable to determining which company is doing well, what are prices doing in real time. So we index all of this data. Now, Reddit obviously recently has become a really powerful driver in just the short-term movement of stock prices. So we work with over 300 clients across investment firms, corporations, universities, and we got a lot of client demand to start tracking this Reddit data set. So we put it together very quickly, and the demand has continued to come in.
Enough precipitation and population are being located in the whole country, and we have to provide water for all of them for different purposes, for domestic, for industries, agriculture, and so on. This is about the water. About the energy also, urbanization and development needs more energy, and people day by day demanding more energy. And in the summertime we are facing a peak of load. So we have started since 3 years ago working on consumption management and not just talking about generation of energy. When we look at the statistics, we see that in last 10 years, every summer, we had increase of 5.2% in the peak load. So it means that every summer we have to invest to have 3,000 megawatts more capacity just to overcome the peak. So since 3 years ago, we have started talking to the people and convincing them that they may use energy in a better way. Even we talk to the major industries and providing them some kind of encouragement that if, for example, they use less energy during the peak hours of the summer days, then we provide them the cheaper electricity in the other time.
That's great.
And it works, and we reduce that rate of 5.2% to just 1%. And this is the way that this summer and last summer we were safe in terms of shortage of electricity.
That's great. Thank you very much. I wish we had more time. We do appreciate it. Dr. Reza Ardakanian, Ministry of Energy here. Pleasure to have you here on Press TV. Many thanks for your contribution.
La iglesia de Nuestra Señora de la Asunción de Cariñena se llenaba de luces para recibir a la gran gala lírica. Un espectáculo para los sentidos en el que la zarzuela y la ópera tomaban las riendas con un elenco de artistas internacionales.
Siempre que tenía la posibilidad, se acercaba para sentir la magia de los artistas.
Nos presentamos aquí con una gran gala lírica en la cual tenemos 4 grandes artistas a nivel internacional. La soprano es Montserrat Martí Caballé, la mezzosoprano de Zaragoza, Beatriz Jimeno, el tenor Alain Damas y el gran...
Est-ce que ça aurait pu être pris en compte un peu plus tôt?
On n'a pas suffisamment mesuré les effets négatifs de l'année qui vient de s'écouler. C'est une année scolaire quasiment perdue. Rappelez-vous, lors du premier confinement. Et les résultats ne se sont pas fait attendre puisque on voit bien que les évaluations révèlent des lacunes très importantes chez les élèves. Ça veut dire une scolarité qui va s'en trouver très durablement perturbée. Donc moi, je considère qu'il faut tout faire pour éviter le confinement. Il faut tout faire pour éviter la fermeture des écoles parce que ce sont les enfants qui en seront très durablement pénalisés. Vous savez, il faut apprécier la situation dans toutes ses dimensions. Bien sûr, il y a la dimension sanitaire, mais on peut aussi tomber malade, de perdre son emploi, de ne pas pouvoir être en relation sociale avec autrui, de ne pas pouvoir voir les siens, ses amis. Les élèves ont besoin, les enfants souffrent de ne pas voir leurs amis, de ne pas voir leurs professeurs, de se sentir dépassés. Les parents aussi sont inquiets. Donc tout ça est à prendre en compte dans les décisions que l'on prend. Le sanitaire est une des données, évidemment, qui capte toute notre attention et qui, à bien des égards, est une priorité, mais il faut pouvoir considérer l'ensemble de la situation. Et tant qu'on n'aura pas vacciné largement, tout le reste seront des ajustements à la marge pour éviter plutôt plus de confinement, plutôt moins de ceci, plus de couvre-feu, etc. Mais la réalité, c'est que c'est la vaccination, l'immunité collective, et là, effectivement.
Her House has resigned guilty in a vote-buying scandal. It had to do with the election in which she won her seat. Kawai Andi and her husband, Kawai Katsuyuki, were both accused of paying bribes to local politicians in Hiroshima Prefecture before the upper house election in 2019. Her husband is a former justice minister. On January 21st, the Tokyo District Court sentenced Kawai Andi to 16 months in prison. It was suspended for 5 years. She tendered her resignation letter to the president of the upper house on Wednesday. It comes just a day before the deadline for her to appeal. She said she didn't want to prolong the dispute or cause any more confusion. Kawai Andi ran in the election as a candidate for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. But she left the LDP in June last year. She was arrested and charged soon afterward. The chief cabinet secretary did not have much to say.
Politicians must choose their own course. Public trust is always essential in politics.
The opposition parties are demanding a more thorough explanation.
Giving up the Diet seat is not enough for such an unconscionable violation of the election rules.
The politician's husband, Kawai Katsuyuki, is being tried separately. That case remains before the courts.
Japan began to reduce its commitments to the deal after former US President Donald Trump pulled out and imposed sanctions on the country. The US sees Iran's moves as a way of breaching the deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a view not shared by Iran. President Hassan Rouhani says his country is waiting on the US to right the wrongs of the Trump era.
Americans must return to the resolution, to international law, and a resolution that was passed unanimously by the UN Security Council. If we see goodwill gesture, we will show it too. If we see action, we'll show it as well. If we see commitment, our response will be full commitment.
In recent days, Iran has increased the number of advanced centrifuges at its main nuclear plant. It allows the country to enrich uranium quicker and to a higher degree, something that concerns Western powers. The EU is stuck in the middle, urging both to talk but with little power to make that happen. For now, nothing has changed. President Joe Biden's administration has not lifted sanctions imposed under Trump, and there's still considerable mistrust between the two countries. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera.
In India, people are marching through the capital in solidarity with protesting farmers and to denounce a crackdown on them. Tens of thousands of agricultural workers have been rallying against the new laws, which they say will make them much worse off. And recently, security has been stepped up against them. Elizabeth Paranam has more.
Hundreds of people have gathered in the center of New Delhi and they're hoping to march 2 kilometers, they say, in support of the hundreds of thousands of farmers who have been protesting on Delhi's streets. They've been met with a very large police presence, police in riot gear, who have been telling them that they don't have permission to protest, that there is a pandemic and that no more than 4 people are allowed to gather. There are police buses standing by to take people away. There's also a lot of water cannon standing by. But the people who have come out say that this is exactly why they're here. Because of what they call police repression, the government repression against protesters. Now, since there was some violence between protesters and police on Republic Day last week, police have arrested around 160 people. They've filed charges of rioting, sedition, attempt to murder against farm union leaders. They've also built massive security barricades around all 3 protest sites. Today, the government of the state of Haryana, which the biggest protest site, Tikri, sits on the border of Delhi and Haryana, have cut off water and electricity, which is a huge concern because there are many tens of thousands of people staying there. Internet services have been cut off for days at the protest site. But despite all of the police action,
Beijing.
Very happy to say that we got blue skies and a couple of puffy white clouds working with us. So while it might look a little overcast on the screen, we're pretty happy with what we've got at the moment.
And you can see the little shadows of them moving along through the windows into the White Room. Mm-hmm. Almost there.
I love this view inside Crew Dragon, and as you saw, there are 4 seats configured right now, and they're numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when you're looking at the seats. Mike Hopkins is in seat 2, that's the commander's seat, and then Victor Glover will be beside him in seat 3. That for Crew Dragon is the pilot seat. Soichi Noguchi is in seat 1, and Shannon Walker is in seat 4.
Once they're all finished getting buckled in, those seats will also rotate into launch position. Right now, it does look like they're a little further away from those display panels, but once they rotate back